This is episode 83 of Changing the Face of Yoga. And I am speaking to Jyoti Jo Manuel, who is the founder of Special Yoga. And this is an organization that has classes in the UK for children with special needs and or additional needs. But she also provides classes and training globally to bring yoga and the tools that it has to those children who have these kinds of needs all around the world. So let's listen. Hello, and welcome to Change the Face of Yoga, teaching toddlers through golden oldies. I'm very excited to be talking to lots of yoga teachers who will explain their passion for teaching yoga to students with different ages, physical fitness levels, wellness levels, and different goals. They will explain the benefits of yoga for these students and will be including teacher tips and pose modifications. I am Stephanie Cunningham of Yoga Lightness, and I've been teaching over 50s for 10 years. So this area is my passion and the passion of many other yoga teachers that you will be listening to in this series. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get started. This is Stephanie Cunningham, and I have an incredible guest today. Her name is Jyoti Jo Manuel, and Jyoti is the founder of Special Yoga, a nonprofit global organization providing yoga as a therapeutic intervention for children and young people with special and or additional needs. The organization is headquartered in the UK, but has a global reach in South America, Russia, India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Nepal, and parts of Europe, which is kind of incredible when you think about it. I'm welcoming Jyoti. And Jyoti, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
Well, no, I think that's a perfect introduction to what we do and who we are.
Okay, great. So what started you on this? Because I've been in your website, and we're dealing with children that have kind of severe needs.
I said we work with both children with very complex needs as well as children with, kind of more social emotional or autism, who are actually in mainstream schools. So we work across the board, really. I think special needs is such a huge, umbrella, and has different meanings in different places as well, which we're finding as well.
Ah, yes, I'm sure that's true. I hadn't thought of that. But how do you manage this? I mean, it sounds like some of it you're actually working with the country's government, and others you're working with individual schools and orphanages and stuff. How do they get to know about you and what you and your organization offer?
Well, I don't really know how people find out about it, to be honest with you. I think social media has a huge, potential for outreach today. Being based in, kind of headquartered, if you like, in London over the years, people travel, have traveled, from all over the world to join us in London. And then, somehow, you get somebody from Spain, or you get somebody from Iceland, or you get someone from Russia, and they say, "Oh, will you come and offer the training in our country?" And, my answer always is yes, but let's see whether you can put that together. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it takes time, and sometimes I never hear from them again, after their very enthusiastic moments. I think the fact that we've been doing this for quite a while, and also we're very flexible about how we offer training. So, in some places we're really just offering workshops to give people just a taste of what we do, and enough for the children to be impacted without people feeling overwhelmed by not being a yoga teacher.
Okay. Yeah.
So, it's really about absolute flexibility and absolute adaptability on our side to create really what becomes bespoke trainings for wherever we are, whether it's, through different schools or education authorities or paediatric professional, with the NHS in the UK, or whether it's in orphanages, in other parts of the world, or as I've just come back from Sri Lanka, where, I'm part of a local NGO. I'm one of the founder members of a local NGO there. And we work, we on our board, we have medical officers and education officers who have opened doors for us to be able to reach the children that are most at need there.
Okay.
That kind of happens differently in different places. And I think adaptability is the key, really, and also I have this really strong belief that we don't, that what we offer can be very simplified and in the same way very powerful. So we don't need people to be yoga teachers in order to help the children necessarily. If you can breathe and you can stretch a little bit and you have some kind of understanding, the children can be impacted very quickly.
You're talking about children who have an amazing range of needs. So are you providing training or tools to these individuals that's kind of targeted towards different needs, or do you think that there's just kind of some general stuff you can do for almost everybody?
Well, I think the general stuff that one can do for almost everybody is breathing.
True.
How one facilitates that might be different depending on the child's needs. And there's lots of different access points to it. When we run our flagship course, our 7-day course, we cover, all the different tools and keys and access points, if you want. We create a toolbox for the individuals, to the people that are participating, to have as many tools as possible so that they have the facility to meet each child, actually. And then when we're not in that situation and we're, offering sort of much briefer workshops, we're really targeting very carefully around the populations that those people may be meeting in a very simplified form,
Okay, could you give us an example of that?
So, if you were to look at breath, for example, you can access breath through your own breathing. You can access breath through touch. You can access breath through movement. You can access breath through sound. You can access breath through massage points. It's specific, points on the hands and the feet, particularly. So if you were with, for example, you were only able to be with somebody for a couple of hours, you might not share all of those tools. You might share a selection of that that's more relevant to the population that they specifically are going to go and share their practices with.
Okay. You said that you don't have to necessarily be a yoga teacher, but you are working with breath, and are you working with movement and mindfulness?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. I mean, it is yoga, and I think it behooves the question of what is yoga, and I think so much of the way in which yoga has come over from India into the West is translated for an awful lot of people as, putting your body into different positions. A lot of classes, may or may not include breathing practices at any particular, at different levels. And if you're lucky, you get a bit of relaxation at the end. So, that's a lot of people's understanding of what yoga is. But actually, yoga is a philosophy of being. It's a way of living. It's a way of being. It's a way of life. And that can be translated in different ways. I think in all of the trainings, irrespective of where we are in the world, our first point of call is always, where are you and how do you meet the child? How do you meet yourself and how do you meet the child? Because when we go into the kind of philosophical aspects of yoga, which is about how do we connect, if you like, and, in the unity of the essence of who we really are, if you simplify that down to the child, our state matters. If we're anxious, the child will pick up our anxiety. If we're open, free, loving, compassionate, meeting the child rather than their behavior, the child not identified necessarily by their condition, then you're actually meeting on a much deeper level from person to person. And that's actually where we start all of our trainings.
I read your blog, and I think it might have been Sri Lanka, but I also read Peru, so I'm not sure which one it was. But but there was a child whose, I believe, mother brought him, and he was in agony, it sounds like, most of the time. And yet he went to sleep, and then you did some work with him while he was asleep. And when he woke up, he was much happier, and his mother said that she could really tell the difference in his body.
Mm-hmm.
And what
happened?
Yeah, I'm kind of like, that just seems so amazing to me that happened. What happened?
Do you know what? I don't know. I actually don't know. I never really know. I think that, I have such complete faith that the tools work, and that, if we kind of go back to the kind of essence of yoga, which actually is, for me, is a very strong connection with the divine, consciousness, universal consciousness, call it what you want, that actually allow, if we allow that to work through us, we have an energy and that comes with an intuitive sense of what the child needs. Mm-hmm. And you can't always explain it. There's a kind of deeper knowing when you connect from that place, I think.
Okay. Well, it did sound almost miraculous. It truly did. I was kind of, my gosh.
I think the yoga is miraculous. I actually think these practices, when they're really used at their potential, are miraculous. I mean, I have to say, I got back from Sri Lanka 3 days ago, and there wasn't one day when I was there when I didn't kind of well up with tears of just absolute gratitude for what I was seeing and what I was hearing, because I was meeting kids who I'd met before who were now walking well, because the parents had done whatever I'd suggested they did. Another mother came back and said that her son's, excessive, I have to say it, quite extreme, epilepsy had reduced significantly in quantity and depth, so that it wasn't so scary for the child or for her, actually. A C-shaped body, which was no longer a C-shaped body. It was more aligned. I mean, it was not fully aligned, but significantly different. And of course, the child was happier, and those are the moments where you just go, wow, just, I feel so humbled and so grateful,
Mm. So I think you said earlier, we may not have been recording, but when you go to a first world country, it's likely to be more of a commercial enterprise. But when you're in the third world countries, it's actually, you're working with charities and orphanages. And it just looked to me like there wasn't much available in third world countries, and these children didn't have a lot of people who had tools to help them. Is that a fair thing to say?
Absolutely. We certainly in the UK, I mean, with all the financial, budget cuts and what have you, certainly there's a huge reduction in services for the kids here compared to what there was maybe 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, actually. But they've never had anything,
Yeah.
So it's a very different picture. It's a very different picture. Yeah.
This may be their only opportunity, or one of a very few opportunities to get some tools to help the children, who, no matter who they are, teachers or parents or specialists.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, 95% of children with physical disabilities in Sri Lanka are not in school, solely because either they can't get there because they haven't got the money, or, I mean, there's only 4 or 5, probably 5 schools that I know of in the whole of the island that can take those kids anyway. maybe 6 actually, but even so, it's quite a big island, comparatively. So there's no place for them to go. It's very different,
But you do go around the world, really, literally around the world. I'm impressed, and give these workshops to, shall we say, more first world countries. Is this the same kind of focus that you just give it to anyone that comes, that understands and comes to these workshops, or are you targeting yoga teachers or targeting pediatric professionals, or?
I don't think we specifically target anybody, actually. I think that, if you have, either you already working with kids with additional needs or special needs, then what the practices will do, or the programs will do, will enhance your toolbox, if you like, to support these children. If you are more of a yoga person who hasn't had so much experience with these children, it's an opportunity to expand your service, I suppose.
You're coming to Sydney in, I've got it here, the 12th through the 18th of January. And it's, I think, your 7-day workshop. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I'm really excited about bringing the work to Australia, actually.
Is this the first time you've brought it to Australia?
This particular program, yes, it is.
Okay. So what can people expect if they come to this workshop?
Well, I think that everybody that comes on these courses come out feeling inspired, feeling empowered, and feeling like they've really got something useful that they can go on and share with the children, whether they're a teacher, a special needs teacher, or whether they're a pediatric professional, or whether they're a parent, or whether they're a yoga person, yoga teacher. So, the 7-day course covers, how to work with all kinds of children, the kind of process that we kind of work with ourselves. We do a lot of heart practices as part of the course. So it's a combination of experiential practices and practical, practical. And we really look at, the whole gambit of what we do to try and create as wide a toolbox for everybody as possible, so that there's no child you can't reach.
What brought you into this? I mean, this is...
I don't really know. I stepped into my first yoga class in 1974, and for me it was one of those aha moments of, so this is the path that I'm being shown as part of my own personal healing process from having had a tricky childhood. And I kind of always had a sense that I would open a yoga center. I was in, a completely different field of work in my 20s, with, in film, television, music business. And the more and more I delved into yoga in my own personal practice, the more I thought, I just can't bear this anymore. It's just like I felt like I was working with people that didn't have a spiritual bone in their bodies, which of course they did, but perhaps they hadn't accessed them. And certainly it wasn't nourishing me on a soul level at all. And then when I first started teaching yoga, I found that I was very drawn, or people with disabilities were drawn to me, and children kind of arrived quite early on, and you kind of just put the pieces together, and I found that this was just the path that was laid in front of me. There was never any specific plan to work with in this way, but it's where I went. It's where it took me, and I have no doubt that it's the the reason that I'm in this body in this lifetime, actually.
So you found your purpose.
I absolutely have found my purpose and my love.
Wonderful. You had your own yoga studio, and then you started to, how did you get to the global aspect of it?
Well, the global aspect kind of unraveled in its own way, because people flew into London from different parts of the world and invited me to come and share the teachings in different places. And, or somebody would, connect me with somebody somewhere. And it just kind of happened. I've never really marketed that piece of us, of our organization at all. I've just always been very open to the privilege, and I'm quite a free spirit, so I like traveling. I'm not very good if you keep me in one place for too long, actually. So, so to be honest, so yeah, no, it's a real privilege to be able to do this in different cultures and different places and different parts of the world. Yeah.
I noticed that you said in your blog that unfortunately in some places a child that has special needs, that it's actually considered something bad for the child and for the whole family, and so they're often hidden away. Or you said there was one child that had been in a goat pen. I mean, it was. How do you get past that do you with the yoga?
Well, interesting, actually. I've named him the Goat Boy, actually. I saw him last week. And, I arrived in the children's home where he's now living. And the first thing he did was he brought me a chair to sit on, which, given that last time he was, unable to, manage himself a year ago, and was still behaving, still had kind of behaviors that resembled a goat in terms of, crawling on the floor and, wanting to eat off the floor and things like that. He's now upright and, functioning like the other kids, which was amazing. And they're doing yoga every day in that school. They filmed a session with me when I was there last time, and which is what they put up. I was quite sort of shocked to see myself on camera, actually, on their screen every day. So he's participating. I mean, not in the same way that the other children are, but he certainly came and sat next to me last week, and he circled around me a few times, and he was pointing at the pointing at the thing. So he'd identified, which was amazing given his story, actually. Yeah. That day made me cry too.
Yeah. I think I would have too. I may now. It just sounds so amazing. Is there anything that you specifically would like to talk about that we haven't covered before we talk a bit more about Sydney?
I don't think so. I mean, I just hope that, anybody that feels called to do this work finds us, because, it's such a powerful practice, and certainly the people that have found us, and really embraced it, are powerfully sharing the practices. And, my mission really in the world is just to reach as many kids as possible. And I can't do that on my own. I need people to help. So, if this is something that you feel called to, please come and find us. Would be my...
So you're going to, where are you going to be in Sydney? I mean, is it?
Well, I think I'm in the north. I mean, I haven't been to Sydney before, so actually I don't even know, to be honest. But I think I'm somewhere in the north bit, the North Shore, something like that.
Okay.
And a very lovely Brazilian woman who lives in Australia, who had come to London and also had participated in a different course that I taught in Sydney, in Melbourne a few years back, several years back actually, has stayed in touch with me and just said, please, 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 we really need you here. Will you come? And I'm like, sure, just organize it. Okay. So she's organizing the bookings and marketing and so on and so forth. So that's where I'll be. And I imagine we've rented a studio. I don't really know a lot other than I'll need to get on a plane and arrive.
It's in Sydney next month, January of 2019, from the 12th through the 18th. And this is your basic 7-day workshop, is that correct?
It is correct. And off the back of that, you will feel absolutely empowered to go and deliver special yoga practices to the children. Absolutely.
Okay. So you will be prepared to do that. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
And it's for yoga professionals, teachers, and pediatric professionals and parents. Is that correct?
And anybody that just feels called to do this work. You don't need to have done yoga in order to come on the course. Sometimes we have, people who've had extensive experience with the children, but haven't had very little or no yoga experience, and then we have people who've got a lot of yoga experience but perhaps don't have as much experience with the kids. So it's open to all, really.
Okay. So anybody that feels called to do this, it's available, and probably is very valuable. You can probably tell I'm not from Australia, but sometimes it's hard for Australians to get stuff because we're so isolated from, we're in the Southern Hemisphere and we're far from everywhere. So it's really great that you've agreed to come here and offer this. Anything that you would like to end with before I give your contact details?
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been lovely to talk to you. I'm in awe of you, actually. I think it's amazing.
To connect with you too, and I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to open up the possibility of more people sharing this work and coming and joining us, whether in Australia or anywhere else next year. I mean, next year I'm hoping starting in Australia, and then I'll be offering the 7-day training in London, Ireland, Spain, perhaps Mexico and Brazil later in the year as well. And as I said, there are inquiries at the moment from South Africa and Finland. So if I can find some space in my ridiculous schedule to do that as well. But there's certainly at some point that both of those will happen as well. Yeah. Australia, definitely come and join us in Sydney. That would be really wonderful.
Jody's website is www.specialyoga, one word, .org.uk. Her Facebook is Special Yoga, and her Instagram.
I have a personal Facebook, which is Jyoti Jo Manuel or Special Yoga. I mean, we have two running. Yeah.
Okay. And Jyoti Jo Manuel. The Jyoti is Jyoti. Just
That's
for
right.
you guys, in case it sounds different. And her email address is Jyoti, Jyoti, at specialyoga.org.uk. So, and if you go to, what is your training website where?
It's Special Yoga for Special Children. And on the website front page, there's a thing that says training. You click onto it and you see the list of trainings. And the one you would be looking for is Special Yoga for Special Children.
Okay, that's in Sydney. So that's how you would find that particular training. Well, thank you so much, Jyoti. It's just amazing what you do, and I'm in awe of your travel. Not even and everything else that you do. I think you're offering such an incredible service and knowledge to, especially children who may not have much else. And I think that's kind of the essence of yoga, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the essence of yoga is to serve, actually.
So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you for that wonderful interview. If you would like to be a guest on Changing the Face of Yoga, please go to my website, www.yogalightness.com.au, and under the Changing the Face of Yoga tab, you can complete Be Our Guest form. After reviewing the form and finding it applicable to this podcast, we will send you a link to schedule an interview. Please download, review, and tell your friends of any podcasts that are of interest to you and to them. If you would like to contact me, send an email to info@yogalightness.com.au. And thank you for listening to Changing the Face of Yoga.